All right, there we go. We're up and running. Sorry about that, everybody. Ready to start. Hey, great. Welcome everyone who's joining us today, both here in the Zoom and also on LinkedIn, and for joining us over your lunch break. So today is all around getting a kind of real and behind the scenes view of what the Career Change Accelerator is actually like, from someone who's been through it. And very much not the kind of version that you read in the syllabus or on the kind of website, but just to hear it from someone, what it actually involves in practice and how it can shape the way that people move forward as well. So for context, for anyone who's not familiar, or the Accelerator is an 8-week program. We've been running it at Escape City for over a decade now, and we've had over 2,600 people been through it. And what we see, multiple times is that the impact, it's not necessarily just about a job move per se, but also about how people make decisions, how they relate to work, and how confident that you can then feel navigating change moving forward. And this session is particularly for those of you who are, considering applying, or who have already applied and want to know a little bit more, and kind of just want to understand what the structure and depth and commitment, whether it's the right next step for you. So as we go through, if you've got any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and then we'll get to them at the end. Okay, great. So I'm Hilary. I lead the Escape School at Escape City and the Career Change Accelerator. I'm joined today by Kit, who did the Accelerator back in the autumn after several years in consulting. Kit's already done lots of thinking about change, but was feeling stuck between, wanting work that felt meaningful and the very real need for financial stability. Kit joined not to kind of change everything overnight, but to work at how to move forward in a way that was both realistic and intentional. Thank you so much for being here, Kit. Before we get started, do you want to do a quick intro?
Yeah, thanks, Hilary. Hey, everyone. Looking forward to the conversation. I mean, I guess the headline that I will share is that I was a little bit skeptical in advance, that I think rapidly changed for me, and I could see that it changed for others also on the program. And I think I can say with confidence that I think it was actually quite instrumental, not uh, in driving like big change, but in getting me kind of unstuck such that then I could build the infrastructure and the architecture of change. So I definitely don't think I would have made kind of progress without it in the same way. Um, but yeah, I'll pass back to Hilary.
Great, thank you, Kit. All right, well, let's start by kind of going back a little bit, because I feel like this stage might feel familiar for a lot of people listening. When you think back to that period before you applied, what was work like for you? What wasn't working for you anymore as well?
Yeah, I think I've been probably for several years feeling like my professional life was happening to me rather than I was like the like steering it in a meaningful and invested way. Um, and the more that carried on, the more I kind of got into this slightly kind of negative spiral where I was like, I've forged forged quite a groove for myself. It's not really a groove that I want to be in anymore, but I don't really know how to actually like pivot out of that. So I've like I started my career in the civil service, then joined consulting, and I was in one of the big four for like 5 years or so, including a couple in the pandemic. Decided I want to change that. I didn't quite know where to, so I became freelance as a kind of uh, the first step towards making a change, but I didn't know what the change was going to be. Um, and then I didn't really know where to go from there. Um, and I was thinking about applying for the accelerator. I think like the previous year, I was like, oh, this could be good, but I'm not sure about it. I probably don't need it. I'll just do it myself. And then later on, maybe it was like the 6 months later one, I was like, you know what, it's time. Like I've spent a long time basically just kind of like sitting in my chair thinking about things, but not actually doing anything. I've tried that route kind of to death. So I will I like have a go with the accelerator. People I really enjoy the Escape the City emails and like the like newsletter from the jobs board. And I was like, I feel like the vibe of this organization fits. Like I like the things that you say. And so yeah, I looked through the syllabus and was like, cool, that's good. And then yeah, kind of signed up.
Yeah, great. And was there kind of, so it was more of a kind of general point to building up there. Yeah. And I can imagine, as I say, a few people definitely nodding along to that tension, knowing that it's not right, but not knowing what else that actually really looks like and that change like actually is or could be. Um, and I think, I mean, you touched on this a little bit there, but one thing that often comes up is whether people feel ready enough to commit to something like this. Um, and was there anything, at that moment that made you feel like I want the structure of this program, or as you mentioned there, like I'm not going to make this change just by doing it myself.
Yeah, I think it was the structure is definitely a big thing. The community, I think, and the accountability that both of those things provide. I think I realized after spending quite some time just like post-it notes everywhere being like, look for this, apply for that, do this, but never really actually kind of like punching through some kind of sense of paralysis or some sense of kind of imagining, but not actually meaningfully in a committed and kind of structured way following through. Uh, I wouldn't call it like a crisis point, but it was a little bit of like a flip the table moment. I was like, fine, I've tried this out. Something's got to give. I'm going to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
And it was definitely, yeah, like, I think 8 weeks it's both a short and a long time. Uh, it's short enough that it wasn't like committing to a year, but it's long enough to mean that like every Tuesday for the next 2 months, I will be doing this. That means that I've
Mm-hmm.
like it gets prioritized above other things. It it became like a staple in the week. And I think after the first session, I was already pretty convinced. I was like, yeah, this is the right decision. I'm happy I did this.
Oh, that's great. And were there any hesitations that you had before applying?
Right, definitely, yeah. I was like, it's I kind of there was a slightly skeptical part of me that was like in the gold rush sell spades, like everyone's selling LinkedIn learning courses. It feels like a great multi-level marketing scheme. Maybe this is the like everyone in some way is feeling a bit lost in their career. Maybe this is just like um, kind of buying into that or getting in that market.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely like a bit of skepticism. But then I think seeing the other people, we started to get to know one another and kind of doing introductions and getting to know you. It's like, oh, these are actually every single one of these people outwardly is professionally very successful in one way or another. But all of them feel in some way like something is missing. And immediately that was like super validating because I felt like a little bit of shame, like, oh, all the people at work are like, you know, everyone's obviously like loving life and thriving or whatever. You don't necessarily like chat to your boss about whether you're happy. Um, and it was really, I think, yeah, it was really motivating and kind of uplifting to see that loads of various different people. There were like lawyers and civil servants and someone that had founded an app, um, and like huge variety, but all of whom, in some different way, had some version of the same set of concerns or same kind of gnawing sense that actually they wanted to change something, but they didn't necessarily know what and they didn't know how. And it was, yeah, it was great to like have those disparate people kind of form into a community, and which was by its origin like both quite vulnerable but also quite optimistic. Like people are
Mhm.
coming there because something is making them dissatisfied, but they're also there because they've decided to do something about it and they believe that something can be done about it. So it was like a really nice energy from the start.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like you say that actually kind of it being just people from all different backgrounds. And whenever I talk to people, I'm saying, oh, you might uh, give people advice or kind of hear different perspectives, but actually you really touch there on what it's actually, like you say, you're kind of in this like shared experience of like all from this, that, and the other. You could be a teacher, you could be a lawyer, but equally, like you've all kind of been feeling stuck and decided to do something about it. Which yeah, it's really powerful.
Yeah.
Um,
And I feel like the program, while it's career focused, I think is kind of psychology led, or is more about how you feel and how to approach things, and kind of underpinned by this sense that like life should be pretty good in as many ways as possible, and it's possible for that to be a lot of ways. And
yeah.
so then how can you start to like shift out of mindsets that I definitely resonated with, and I think everyone else did as well, that like whether it's defeatist or a bit afraid or a bit kind of anxiety or whatever, in order to then just start to like reframe the way that you think and the way that you approach it, and then start to think about what to do about it, and then start doing things about it. It was like
Mhm.
a I can see it being like an MBA module or something like that, probably.
Mhm. Yeah, and actually, again, you kind of about. I always think about it. Yes, it's a career change program, but it actually, because your career is obviously such a big part for most people, such a huge part of your life and of your happiness. It really is kind of, it goes further than just oh, how can I get a new job? Or it's kind of, it's almost like taking a step back and looking at everything.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there was like it felt really like human, and also there was like a kindness to the energy. I know I'm sure that that's a kindness that you bring by character, but also it did feel like this was something that I am doing for me, that
mm,
is not like how can I improve my CV? It's like how
mhm,
can I take stock and start to build the life of my choice in a way that actually then becomes something that I feel like invested in and proud of? How do I start to move away from, these kind of uh like blockers, or like like ruminating beliefs that like, oh no, it's too late, oh I don't know what I'm going to do, oh, I don't know how to, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not like. And the amount of like shared, like the collective shared sense of how different people had been like prevented by their own fears,
mhm,
I think was really powerful. And also the way that then it kind of pretty practical but also quite introspective ways of acknowledging and like moving beyond those, which is not going to happen in 8 weeks time, but also at
mhm,
least you like, I have definitely noticed shifts in the way that I think and feel about things, such that I feel like I am making progress and having movement in a way
mhm.
that like much more since I think I finished the course at the start of December, and I think I've done more in the last 2 months than I did in the previous 12, in terms of like actual steps towards, like building in a good direction.
That's amazing. That's great to hear, and that's something we'll come on to the kind of post accelerator, I guess,
Mm.
because like you say, it's an 8 week period, and then kind of what comes next. So just kind of going back to your what you might have noticed start to shift to you. So in the first few weeks, was there anything that started to change that you kind of noticed for yourself?
Yeah. For me, actually, it was like in the first session. So first session, um, there was an exercise. Um, all of the exercises are kind of like rooted pretty briefly in theory, and then we kind of start to think about it, how that applies for yourself. And it was like debunking various different myths that are pretty culturally widespread, but also not that conducive towards helping you to like think of things in a good way. And one of them was you got to follow your passion, and then you feel like some kind of fraud because you haven't got a passion, or you've got too many passions, or you don't whatever. And so instead, the it was like, right, instead of following your passion, just chase your curiosities. So take 5 minutes, write down what you're curious about. And it basically got to the very heart of the paralysis that I felt for the last like loads of years, where I was interested in psychology, but also in literature and in music and in art and in culture and theatre, but also cities and blah, blah, blah. And I wrote all these things down and was like, these are all like written down here is ultimately the like heart of my paralysis, because I felt like going in one direction would be closing the door on all the other ones. But I didn't want to close the door on any of the other ones. So I didn't take a step towards anything that I was really interested in. And as a result, I stayed stuck. I then realized, having written them all down and like further in that exercise, I was like, these are actually all different versions of the same thing. And the thing that I'm interested in is the human experience writ large, approached in a variety of different ways. And as a result, uh, a step towards one is not a step away from all the others. It's not a matter of choice, but a matter of sequencing. And I was like, oh my God, like, wow. It's been like 25 minutes and we've just like carved through the very heart of the thing that was like, I hadn't even realized it was that was like ultimately like paralytical. And I
Mm.
actually phoned my sister like the next day and was like, wow, I have to tell you something.
Oh, that's great. And I think it's that thing of like, when you leave school, do whatever is that comes next for you, you kind of we're almost like programmed to have this way of like how a
Mm.
career is supposed to work, how it's supposed to be. And I think like when you can kind of start to try and almost like reframe it and think about it in that different way, it really kind of it can be like almost like, as you said, a bit of a penny drop moment, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And like it was really powerful to experience my own penny drop moments and also see other people having those similar
Yeah,
moments. And
yeah.
the structure of it, I guess there's three broad like flavors. One is where we're listening to you. Another is where we're thinking for ourselves, with like nice Miro jingles in the background to like focused. And then like in groups, small groups or larger groups, like discussing and then commenting on others and stuff like that. And I think the it was, I don't know, each three of them in different ways I think was very powerful. Hilary, you obviously like a deep scholar of this stuff and you care. That I think like shone through very clearly. It was good to, you know, have time on a weeknight where
Mm,
I was made to sit with my pen thinking about big questions that I have typically either fled from thinking about in like a meaningful way, or have thought about infused in some kind of like defeatist like mentality. And then also to kind of share your reflections with a group of people, all of whom
mm,
are like, mm, like it was a really open and kind and invested room, and people genuinely wanted to help others and reflect back and be like, oh, well, you said this, have you thought of that? And that like hive of like mutual commitment towards this like whole thing, which for everyone will look different, but in many ways is actually kind of like a shared, everyone's got a different version of what's ultimately the same journey. And I
Mm,
think people went in recognizing that was like the steps and the names of like, oh, I was X, but I don't like Y and I want to do more Z will be different for everyone. But that structure of it is basically the same.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And all those, and also again, something we touched on early on is the kind of thing of what work is in terms of an identity sense
Mm.
within, and obviously everybody's coming from different standpoints with that, but also that what kind of letting go of that looks different for everybody as well.
Yeah. And then like there's something kind of professionally countercultural about, I think, like admitting in a meaningful way that you feel like in some way malnourished in your soul by the work, and that instead of either just like dealing with that and then like getting super depressed or like switching it out or whatever, coping in some way, there's this idea that actually you can kind of shape things in a way that is built by you for you, and
Mm-hmm.
and it I guess it can be nourishing for your soul. But
Mm-hmm.
what that looks like obviously is different, and it's not prescriptive. It's not like, oh well, you don't like this, everyone should do that. Is
Yeah.
not at all like that. But the way of working out what it is about this that is dissatisfying and what that for you looks like, and then how to start working towards that, I think is actually a pretty like universal um like methodology. Makes it sound a little bit too like clinical, but like like a you know a philosophy in
So
a way of thinking and
yeah.
approaching it.
And I know you mentioned the kind of in the early session the like mindset shift. Were there any other like particular exercises or conversations or moments that stayed with you kind of throughout that 8 weeks?
Quite a few actually. Like I think pretty much every week I started to look forward to it quite a lot. It was quite tiring because it
Mm-hmm.
started at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. It's like straight after work, and then goes for like 2.5 hours. But even though kind of like we got to turn up and like, everyone's how's everyone feeling? You're like, yeah, feeling good, feeling a bit tired, da da da. But like despite the commitment of it and the you know the ask to be like after a day of work to then be engaged uh, for another 2.5 hours. The conversations I think were incredibly rich, and I think one of the things I think I've always one I if there was like a mantra, I guess something that I heard you repeat a lot, which I think everybody probably needed to hear and probably needed to hear repeated, is that um, uh, clarity comes from action. You don't wait until you have clarity to take action, but instead start taking action, and that will bring clarity. And I think that I think people kind of needed to hear that. Well, I certainly did anyway, because I was like, well, I don't know what it is that the like the end step of this whole destination is. So how do I know which direction to start walking in? Like I'm going to go wrong. But obviously, then you just like stand still and you don't learn anything. You don't start to get a sense of like I did like this for these reasons, but it's not quite right. But it feels a bit closer to this. Maybe I should do that. And I feel like the whole program was loosely split into two halves. The first half about uh, like where to go, and the second half about starting to get you going. And the where to go is not like what's the final step. It's the what's broadly the stuff that might be right, like lower the stakes. It's
Mhm.
just get some thinking going. Like, well, I like this and I like that. Cool. Maybe these various things, and then moving on to okay, right. We've had a great time thinking about what it might be that we want to walk towards. So the second half then was kind of actually quite practical steps as well as like mindsets and I don't know, ways of being that then can help you start moving in that direction. And I think for me in particular, that was really valuable. Like
Mhm.
there's that idea of the kind of entrepreneurial mindset where you gotta like start by doing, like instead of telling, like showing. So if you in future want to do something, then just start doing it. And then instead of telling people, you're like, oh yeah, I want to do this thing. You're like, I have done a small version of this thing. And
Yeah.
then, kind of not quite self-promoting because obviously everyone's like deeply culturally allergic to that, as I am. Perhaps not, perhaps some people are better at it, but just like chatting to people and starting to show your thing. And
Mhm.
generally speaking, people are interested. And if they're not, then whatever, other people will be. And it's not like some great existential like nightmare if you ask someone to have a chat and they say no. You're like, okay, no drama.
Yeah, that's fine. That's okay. Yeah, absolutely. It's that kind of distinction between like insight and thinking.
Mm,
And I think, we talk about this on the program, but obviously as human beings, we are like almost programmed to like think and plan, like it makes you feel good. Um, and actually taking the step into something that is unknown, which is often what the action might be, is like it can feel like um almost like uncomfortable. And
totally.
actually, yeah, kind of, I suppose some like an outcome that I see is that kind of helps in terms of like trusting your own self judgment and kind of the confidence that you then have in yourself. Did you feel that at all, Kit?
Yeah, I mean, there's a there's a line in a Graham Greene book that I really like, which is happiness is never so welcome as changelessness. And it kind of hits a bit hard, I think. When I first read it, I was like, boom, I'm probably never going to forget that. Um, and even though you kind of know that to be true, it's quite difficult to step into the discomfort that is involved in doing the change that is
Mm-hmm.
necessary to start building happiness. And yeah, I mean, self-confidence, I think definitely. I think that the thing really, I think that it would be hard to say that I like came in with low self-confidence and came out with high self-confidence, but I think it's um more about the stakes. So
Mm-hmm.
this idea that because like I am doing this and I don't want to do this, but I don't know what that is. And anyway, I'm probably not going to be good enough at it. Like instead of trying to solve that equation, it like moves the equation to the side in a way that actually demands much less confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh, well, I'll start by having a chat with someone about to ask what it's like. That takes, well, for different people, it might take more or less, but it takes for everyone less confidence to do that than to like make the radical transformation.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then as you start doing more and more and more of those things, the confidence just like inevitably builds. It's like a kind of I don't know, emotional momentum grows. And then you
Mm-hmm.
probably don't really notice that you've grown in confidence, but you like just feel a bit better about things. And you feel like what previously you might not have wanted to do or felt able to do, you just now are and you're thinking about other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And you've kind of touched on a big part of the program, around kind of testing. So, well, we kind of refer to them as experiments, but low risk, real world tests that kind of as opposed to trying to decide everything up front. What did that kind of idea of taking an experimental approach look like or unlock for you?
Yeah, I mean, it forced it to become real in the world rather than just another kind of thought exercise at home, which I think was a kind of important transitional moment. Like, it's definitely obviously a step from like thinking by yourself to collectively thinking in a kind of structured way, but still, nothing has yet actually happened. Like, nothing's existed, nothing's been created per se, except, kind of maybe a shifts in one's own way of being or thinking or mindset or whatever. But then when you start, then be like, okay, fine, plan out these experiments, low stakes, but in a way transformational, because it ceases to be a reflective exercise only, and also then starts to be like a meaningful step in towards something like constructive and actual. Um, and these experiments, they could be as small as like speak to someone, or let me shadow you for a day, or let's go for a coffee and tell me about this or whatever. And I think it was really helpful. In fact, one of the people, I decided that as an experiment, it would be good to speak to a guy who I know who's or like have met a couple of times, but quite respect, who's a writer who has a background in kind of corporate, um, and now is like a screenwriter and he's written plays and things like that. I was always thought he was like a really interesting and quite impressive and curious guy from kind of put in two worlds. And so I messaged him and was like, hey, do you want to go for lunch? And he was like, sure. And then at the end of that lunch, I was like, hey, do you want to be my mentor? And he was like, yeah, great, cool, why not? And so now we meet on like a monthly basis.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's such a like really nice unexpected outcome as well, because I
Yeah,
can't imagine you might have got to that without doing that or gone into it thinking that that's what you were going to
totally.
kind
Yeah,
of.
yeah, not at all.
Um, yeah, that's great. Was there anything that you explored that gave you clarity by like, not being right, by not you being like, oh God, no, that's not that's a nice direction, but it's not for me.
Mm, I I can't think of anything, but also I
No.
think that's probably a matter of sequencing. Like, I've been leaning in one direction,
Yeah.
but there are definitely things that are not right that I think would be like really fun when I write them down and like fantasize and like daydream. But then, you actually try and
Yeah.
probably not. But
Yeah. And I think the kind of whole like premise of testing a direction really again like kind of takes the pressure off of being like, right, I need this to be certain, I need
mm,
to kind of almost removes that paralysis of needing that certainty.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um in terms of, I suppose, more practical concerns for people, how did you find the kind of weekly structure land alongside your existing work and responsibilities, and kind of time fitting it in?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely an additional commitment, and I think there were times when it's been a long day at work, and I like would much rather do something else than then be on Zoom for like 2 hours doing some like hard thinking. But like, although that was a cost, the value that it provided outweighed it. But also, like, if you need to miss a session, then miss a session. Like, people, I think it was quite permissive. Everyone kind of recognized that you're not being forced to be here, and if there are like reasons that there's something else that you need to do instead, then that's kind of fine.
Mhm.
You're not gonna get like told off for it. Um, but no, I think that the structure was um very powerful, but also, you know, it is work,
Yeah,
even if it
yeah.
is enjoyable.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. And then in terms of kind of when you kind of come to thinking or making decisions now, how might you kind of approach things differently as a result of the program?
I think a lot of it's changed. I think I'm less stuck in a kind of right, I need to decide in full the shape of my life now.
Mm-hmm.
Like I need to decide now what the shape is that I'm trying to build towards, like in full, which you kind of never really made any progress with. And instead now just like, oh, I think that could be a nice thing. I'll try that. And I think that's I guess the action and clarity kind of point in practice in a way. I was like I don't need to like have a job title in mind and then spend ages like sweating over this kind of like pre-speculative application for a job
Mm-hmm.
that I don't even know necessarily I want, but it just sounds like it would be quite fun. But then in
Yeah.
practice, like it might not be. Um, and yeah, just like I'll just try things. And most people are actually pretty permissive in with their time.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's that approach to just kind of trying to take the action first as opposed to yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like
sitting and
test, learn, grow writ large.
yeah, yeah. Okay, great. And I suppose in the same sense is that kind of how you might approach or relate to uncertainty, like if you're kind of in a certain situation, it's like, right, how am I gonna take this step forward just by doing something
Yeah,
without knowing whether it's the right thing or not.
totally. And I think the fact of the new year in a way kind of
Yeah.
like supports that. Like the the program finished in around like the start of December, and then obviously it's Christmas and everything's like a bit hectic. Then it's like, right, reset. I've done a lot of great thinking. I've started getting things in motion. Now it's a new year, and and I think the program was, I think, a pretty significant contributor to this. But like at the start of the year, I felt actually really positive about it. I was like, I feel like this is going to be a good year for actually making like meaningful motion. Like, I don't know where it's going yet. As time goes on, I get a greater and greater sense of where it is, but I'm still not able to answer the where are you going to be in 5 years question. But I have some like pillars of it
Mhm.
more than I did before.
Great. Yeah, I think you're right about the kind of it's like a real between the like new year, new you messaging that I feel like you see everywhere, but
Mm.
actually like kind of whether it's like you finishing the program or someone who's thinking about starting it now, like actually like you say, just almost like having a clear space to be like, right, I'm doing this work and this is kind of my like runway to move forward with it. And yeah. Okay, great. So just I guess to finish off with like my questions for you, Kit, and then if anyone has got any, please do feel free to drop them in the chat for the last couple of minutes. Um, if you if you could go back and speak to yourself before you'd applied, what would you say?
Nice. Um, I would say make sure you cook enough dinner on the Monday so that you have leftovers on the Tuesday, so you don't get hungry at 8:30 p.m. No,
Yeah.
that's a practical point. In general, I think I would say like, why not? Like, we've probably tried a bunch of other things, and if it's worked, then that's awesome. Probably hasn't because you're here, so why not? Like, lean in.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. All right. Thank you so much, Kit, for just being so open and so
Yeah, welcome.
eloquent and for sharing your experience of the accelerator.
No problems.
Um, and I think just to kind of, I guess, for me to just give it like a quick shape of what the kind of 8 weeks entails, um, just I suppose um, to say that it's not necessarily about kind of like teaching a magic formula, as it were, but it's all about more about kind of giving you the space and the tools and the support to help you find out what's right for you or what directions feel worth exploring. And the kind of journey tends to unfold in three phases. So first phase is around kind of like taking a step back and reflecting. Most of us don't give ourselves permission to stop and ask what really matters. So those first couple of weeks are about kind of pressing pause, stepping back from autopilot and looking at kind of values, strengths, needs. And actually, a lot of people often say, oh, it's the first time I've really stopped and thought, what do I really want and need from my life and work? And then moving into the kind of phase 2, which is, as we've talked about, the experimental and exploring part. So this is where things really start to open up. So we map out possibilities, we explore industries or directions that you might not have previously considered, as I know you did, and then you start running small, low risk experiments. So very much the antidote to analysis paralysis, and kind of getting out your head and into the real world. And then finally, kind of the third phase where it's all around kind of moving. By this point, you'll have gathered your kind of insights and the data and the confidence to pull everything together into a plan. So kind of making sure you've got a direction that feels right for you, for now, not necessarily forever. And so that you can kind of leave with a clear next step, to make sure, and making sure you've got systems and accountability in place so that you can kind of keep going once the program ends. So yeah, that's the kind of shape of the accelerator. Does anyone have any other questions? And if you do, please do pop them in the chat. Steph, I can see that you had said that you've got 2 small children, and so one of the big blockers to moving jobs is worrying about the lack of flexibility somewhere new. Is this addressed at all in the course? I would say that in terms of kind of making sure that work, it's kind of, as we've talked about, it's a kind of holistic approach of like life and work, and it does need to work. And kind of one exercise that we do at the start is all around kind of your needs and your ingredients. And actually, if flexibility is something that is really important to you because of your life situation, then you need to, then that be factored in, and we kind of then will work through ways to make sure that is made possible. Kind of as towards the end of the program, as we ask, kind of setting up, like, as we say, like the next steps and what things might you kind of shift on versus things that actually feel non-negotiable. Kit, I don't know if there's anything else you'd add to that.
I think a lot there's I think you covered it pretty well. I think a lot of people had that same concern, and I think that the recognition of that as like a real thing, um, whether that be financial or children or mortgage or partner or whatever, I think there's a definite recognition that people are coming in with, they're people with lives, and this stuff is not insignificant. It's like serious questions, uh, and I think that, yeah, we discuss it, I think, or recognize it and factor that into the thinking. There's not like a one set answer for everyone, but I think there's definitely space given to finding the answer for each person.
Yeah, and I think actually you touched on an important point that I know a lot of people think about around kind of money, and the fact that this, for a lot of people, it comes at a moment where money can, or it's a real thing, especially if you're thinking about changing, because you might be kind of thinking about future income and what that looks like. And I think it's again, the accelerator isn't about telling people you've got to make a pay cut or make a reckless move, but actually taking the time to help people think realistically about trade-offs, like around money, and what's actually sustainable for them, what's real, given your unique situation. Hopefully that answers for you, Steph. David, this one's for you, Kit. What's your situation now with regards to finding meaningful work?
Yeah, I guess there's 2 answers to that. One is because I now kind of see my work in a different light, in that I've come to the view that over the long term, it is something I am doing for me, for what it provides, that I can then start to shift it rather than something that I have no choice in or something that is happening to me. So I'm still doing the same work that I was doing on the course, but I'm feeling better about it. And at the same time, I've started actually kind of like two different things. One is a new training course, like a year foundation program in psychotherapy.
Oh.
And the second is I've actually we are about to record the pilot, uh, starting a podcast with another participant. Hilary,
Oh.
I'll leave you to ponder who that might be.
I know, I'm intrigued.
And so I'm finding meaningful work is for me is like kind of it's less applying for a job that I think will provide all the answers and more building you know, a kind of quilt of different things that provide in some way for me. I don't know what the end goal is yet, but these are things that I'm enjoying.
That's great. Oh yeah, well, when the recording's done, Kit, we'll
Yeah,
have to share your podcast with the Escape community.
absolutely.
Um, and then final question from Sarah, because I'm conscious it's everyone's lunch break. How much support is given on the course? What happens if you get stuck? Um, I guess from my perspective as the kind of program leader, like we absolutely wouldn't want anyone to be stuck, and it really varies per person. Some people are really happy to just kind of, you know, come to each session each week and then do the bits in between and go away, and that's where other people kind of might need to have more of a kind of always available for like a one-to-one conversation if someone feels like they want to talk something through, or they're not sure where they're going with it. So it's very much kind of we want this to work for people and for it to kind of unlock what it needs to unlock. So yeah, kind of I would say if you need to have a chat outside of the Tuesday, we can absolutely do that. And also obviously always available on email and Slack. I don't know, Kit, is there anything else you'd add?
Um, I don't think anything further to add. Like I think different people may have a different sense of what it means to be stuck, but it's not really the sort of thing where you're like, you need to do this and you fall behind. Like it's kind of uh like gentle and supportive, such that it's unlikely that you will get stuck because of the nature of it. But if you do, then there is definitely space for like, I'm struggling with this thing. Let's bring that in and talk about it.
Brilliant. So nicely put, Kit. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. And thank you, Kit, for being so open and thoughtful with all your kind of answers about your experience. So for anyone listening who's been feeling similar as Kit may have done, the accelerator is there to give you that time, that structure, and that kind of support to really work on what's next for you. Rather than just trying to kind of plow through the mud on your own. So applications close this Thursday for the program that starts on next Tuesday, the 17th. I have put the links in the chat, but also if you've got any questions or anything else that comes up, then feel free to drop me an email. And when I send around the recording, I'll also share Kit's contact details if there's anything you'd like to kind of chat to him about. But yeah, thank you everybody for joining today, and thank you so much, Kit,
Yeah, no,
for
thanks,
being
Larry.
such a wonderful guest.
No, it's good to see you again. Nice to chat.